alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello, and welcome to Frankenmovie. We're your hosts, Melissa Whitty and
Andy Merryweather. How are you, Melissa?
Tell me about the nines.
The nines.
The nines.
I'm a little nervous today because we are continuing on with our theme of playing as God with the nines. Yeah. And you had said last episode, and I knew this before we recorded, that you call this your favorite movie. So you even said the pressure's on me a little bit today, and I am feeling it, but I am curious. I don't know if right on the top you want to explain maybe why is this your favorite movie?
I don't know if I have like a single reason why. I know, like, I watched it immediately. I got it wrong on our last episode because I started to think about it, and I remember. Do you know how important this was to me that I remembered the reviewer that I saw gave this a 4-star out of 5. I read it in Empire magazine. The guy was Damon Wise. I bet he's still a film critic, but it's just in my memory. It's just one of those things that's like, it's just a very informative moment. So I'm sort of 21. He gave this movie a 4-star movie. The writer of Big Fish, I think maybe at the time. Yeah, if that joins up, has directed his first film. And like, I was in love with Ryan Reynolds at the time. So Two Guys and a Girl was my favorite sitcom at the time. I was tracking down anything Ryan Reynolds was doing. I remember him being like the top of every kind of the next big thing list, and then it never really happening. And it's wild now that because of Deadpool, he's this huge thing, but it felt like for ages that I was the only person who really knew him for a long time before he made it. And The Nines was just like always considered my favorite movie. And it definitely was a little bit of exclusivity. I was the only person I knew that had seen it or even heard of it. Yeah, even Anna felt pressure to watch it. Not pressure to watch it, but like she didn't watch it for a long time in our relationship because she knew it was my favorite movie. And the idea of her not liking it, she felt it was a horrific thing. So when she finally watched it, and this was really funny because I went and checked her letterbox. At the time, she was updating her letterbox and she doesn't now. But she gave it a 5-star. And I'm like, you do not think that's a 5-star movie. And then when I stuck it on for this, I think I hadn't seen it in 3 years, and I stuck it on for this, and she was interested in kind of rewatching it, and she was like, "Oh, maybe," and she was like, "I think you're going to have to like explain it to me as we go because I don't think I got it last time." I was like, "Well, you've given it 5 stars. You're doing it to appease me," which is the problem, maybe. But I've never shown this movie to someone who's gone, "Oh, I can see why that's your favorite movie." So I'm not averse to the idea that people don't think it's the best thing ever because it's definitely not. But I think, you know what would be really interesting? If, say, we're doing this podcast for a year, if the Nines came up then and you know me a year down the line, you'd go, I can see why this is your favorite movie. So I think it's a very personal thing. I think like that age, I had really kind of solidified and was able to articulate why I was atheist. So I'd been a Catholic growing up, church every Sunday, didn't even know the existence of anything other than God. And then I basically a few people that I consider my heroes started to be much more vocal about atheism, and I started reading and stuff like that. And then the Nines kind of was another part of that. So if I put up on my pedestal the people that inspired me to be the kind of logical thinker that I am, it would be like your Tim Minchin, Richard Dawkins, and this movie, although this movie is like the spiritual version of it. I just liked how it played with it. It definitely was right in the perfect part of my life. But I watched it yesterday and I still adore it to pieces. And I love how every single line, every single look, every moment, every decision, everything is so meticulous. Yeah. And that's what I had said to you after last week's show. I said every line is crucial, and I said to Anna, I should never have said anything. I shouldn't have said Ryan Reynolds is God creating the God. Like when I went into this movie, I didn't know anything. The review was a 4-star Ryan Reynolds review. I watched it, so I didn't know anything about it, and I think that's the way you should go in, not knowing anything, because then the drip feed reveals are probably more impactful. You shouldn't know there's anything to do with the God, but that's the theme we're in.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think that necessarily, I don't know, ruined it for me. I don't know. I particularly just didn't really enjoy it that much. I will say I think it's a very like ambitious film, and there was elements that I liked about it. I just don't think it all came together for me, and I had a hard time kind of grasping at it. Like, you know, I watched it I think 2 days ago, and it's not that memorable to me.
Interesting.
Like it's not one that like, because like you had mentioned that like you watched it right again and like you just were like so kind of like interested to revisit it, and like I have like quite the opposite feeling. Like I don't really want to revisit it. I do think it warrants a rewatch though at the same time. Like I would be definitely open to rewatching it like down the road, because there is a lot to it, and like you said, everything does kind of matter, and so I think on a repeat viewing maybe I would appreciate it more. But at the same time, when I leave a movie and I feel kind of just about it, like it doesn't really make me want to rewatch it.
Yeah, I get that.
Versus like a movie I actually watched the other day, The Zone of Interest, like that's one I just cannot stop thinking about. Where I don't really want to revisit though because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. No, this isn't Zone of Interest for sure, and I did love Zone of Interest. But so let's break it down for anybody who hasn't got a chance to watch it or whatever. This is basically the premise, which the premise is a spoiler. So if you are wanting to watch it cold, then go ahead and do that, and you can see which side of the fence you're on. But essentially, it's a movie that blurs the lines of reality and not. And it does that within the movie, and it does that in the fourth wall, and it does that from the writer's perspective, and it does that from the actor's perspective. There's so much thickness in that blurring the line thing. So there's way more than just like, oh, this person, you know, like some people say towards the end of the Joker that there's a moment where the rest of the movie is a fantasy. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm even talking about. I'm talking about the fact that there's a lot of lines delivered that are right to us as an audience. So like 35 minutes in, this is where there was a moment when I was watching it like the first time, and I think it's like 35 minutes in, and it made me sit up in my chair because Melissa McCarthy as Margaret, the handler, she asks Gary, Ryan Reynolds' actor persona, to take a seat. She pats the chair. He sits opposite her, breaks her heart that he can't sit next to her. And then she says, theories? Now, I wanted to pause the movie at that point. That's a question for us. What's your theory as to what's going on here? Because clearly something's going on. The world around him isn't quite what he thinks it is. And she basically is saying to him, what are your theories? But she's saying it to us. And I did it to Anna. Anna couldn't remember anything about what happened. So I paused it and I said, well, answer her question. And Anna, like, you know, so it feels like that. And he says a few answers of what people would typically, because the movie's directed by a screenwriter, you can sort of see those influences in it. He sort of does the typical screenwriting versions of what's happening. I don't think anyone would ever guess that he's an almost god, that, you know, humans are 7, koalas control the weather, or like that touch. But yeah.
I really want to know your opinion about the koalas.
Yeah, I think it's just a throwaway. But I think I like it as a cuteness thing. Like, what is it? Humans are 7, monkeys are 6s, koalas are 8s because they control the weather. I think it's just an absurdity. I think it's a line that, do you know, this movie and adaptation are very similar to me in that kind of like, they don't know what's real and what's not. And the writer didn't know what was real and what's not. I've got loads of behind the scenes stories, by the way. I know everything about this film.
Oh, I bet you do. But okay, really quick, I'm going to stop you because I want to go back to the koala bear thing, because for me, that was a line, you say it's a throwaway line, but for me, it undercuts everything about the movie, in my opinion, like in a negative way, because the whole tone of the movie is fairly serious, I feel. Like, there's little funny moments here and there, but like, I don't find it super absurdist. There's like moments, but like, I think that was a problem I had, was like, it didn't know what it wanted it to be. Like, it didn't know what tone it wanted. And so like I struggled with that, because it's like, okay, this is the big reveal kind of like what the nines is, kind of, I guess. And then it's like, oh yeah, quals are 8s and they control the weather, so they're above humans. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
But don't you think that Melissa McCarthy is playing a child, basically, like, because she's so small compared to him. Like, one of the first things she says to him is, "I'm your number one fan." It's a very important line because
oh, interesting.
Okay, so
that's not how I interpreted it.
yeah, so she knows she's speaking to God, and she plays the role that he gives her every single time. This happens. So he was gone for 4,000 years on basically this drug addiction of living on Earth. He created. We're seeing universes 88, 89, and 90. He's done 87 before. It says he played slaves and kings, and he dabbled in all sorts of stuff. And towards the end of this, he strikes up a friendship with this girl. And it starts on the phone. They call each other, and that is a short movie. It's called God, written and directed by John August. It's a short movie with Melissa McCarthy. She plays this woman who has been speaking to God on the phone for 10 years. Then she finally gets to meet him. That's where we are. So, but she is playful around him. She tries to do jokes with him. She does that Ali Ali outcome free thing. She tries to like see if he remembers her, like. So she breaks character for a second to try and see, are you G, the G that I've been talking to all these years? And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? And so she often will try to joke with him about silly. She's trying to always make things lighthearted, because you have to remember, in the moment she's telling him, she knows her universe is over. Whatever goodness she had in that universe, she might have had a boyfriend or, had parents that she loved in that universe. She knows this is going away, and she does try to make it lighthearted. And John August cast comedians for a reason. I find the movie very funny. Yeah, the whole cast is they're funny people, but I find Sarah in the one we're talking about, she's the one that's like a little more strict down the line. But even that, if it's not absurd, she breaks into song at one point because she doesn't know. Were you confused by why she was breaking into song?
I mean, the whole that's what I mean. I had a hard time kind of like understanding what tone it was going for. It felt like a lot of ideas that didn't really like cohesively come together for me personally.
Isn't that the plot of the movie?
I guess.
So the whole thing is that in Gavin's storyline, which is Gavin's storylines when it cuts to reality TV. Ryan Reynolds is doing a full-on impression of John August in this one. He looks like him. He acts like him. He's playing it camp and gay, just as John August is in real life. And in Gavin's one, he literally says the line, I have all these characters, they're all in my head, I'm trying to let them out. There are loads of lines that Gavin says that are like right on the nose. Like he says about when he's playing video games that like if you get stuck, you can just hit the reset button. That's what life should have, a reset button. It's all the things that he is, right? It's all the things that he's doing. But that thing where he says, I've got all these characters in my head, I want to let them out, and he wants to protect them. And he thinks about the characters first over the actors in that particular sequence, which leads to his fight with Melissa McCarthy. All improvised, by the way. And I think you can tell that they're improvising because they make mistakes in the dialogue.
So I feel like a lot of the stuff you're saying is like this added context that because you've like watched the movie several times, like you watched the short film, it like the director might like he looks like I know nothing about I know Melissa McCarthy and I know Ryan Reynolds, like that was about all I knew personally with the film. So it's just like it's hard for me the stuff you're saying is interesting and it's like okay that makes sense, or like it has a better appreciation, I feel like
exactly and that's exactly right. I think I basically thought this conversation would go I understood everything, I just didn't like it, which would suck, or there were likely things that I missed because you know the film better, and there's a probably more enjoyable way for me to watch this. I do think the movies are a double watch. I think you have to see it at least twice. And then if you had to do some sort of figuring out what the writer was intending, I'll explain a little bit of the Gavin thing. So John August wrote the film Go, which Melissa McCarthy had a very small role in. He really liked her. And so he cast her in a TV show he was making called DC. He made the pilot. She was supposed to have this big role. It was going to be like a grower, huge season 2, like up into the lead characters. But she was one of those like recurring characters initially. So he'd written this like second season role, and the show got chopped from 13 episodes to 7 episodes, which was how many they'd filmed, essentially cancelled. And he had a conversation with her where he had to say like, "I'm so sorry," and you watch Gavin tell her exactly the same thing. So that is all real life. The phone call that she receives whilst doing her floating head at her one-man show, which is also supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, this idea that every actor wants to do their one-person show thing. So it's Melissa McCarthy like doing a Curb Your Enthusiasm style persona of herself. So the phone call she receives that's genuine. So the cameras are rolling, her phone goes off. I'm so sorry, I have to take this. That's all real. Ben Falcone then joins the moment. They just kept the cameras rolling. They got their offer on the house. That was all really happening.
Oh, interesting.
So that was real. Their reactions are real. There's nothing fake in there. Ben Falcone is then written into the story to become the husband at the end, which is all the best possible worlds. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, and he's in a lot of Melissa McCarthy movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I did like that. I was like, oh, here he is again.
So Melissa McCarthy's husband Ben, he happened to sit next to her and then ended up in shot. So in this world, in Gavin's world, she's married to Ben Falcone for real because of that moment. And they decided it was such a sweet moment, they left it in. And it also adds weight to then her getting dropped from the show, because you put the pieces together that she bought the house knowing she was going to be part of this show, which was not the case, of course, because it was real. So there's a lot of that going on. One of my favorite lines in the Gavin story is Susan, the producer, telling him, "You think you're a man, you're not," because at that point, I didn't have the reveal the first time I watched it. That was one of the first things that I noticed on the second watch, was like, oh shit, she literally told him he's not a man. You know, obviously there are things like, I don't have a belly button in the first scene. Maybe I'm a god. But that one was the one where I was like, oh shit, like that line, it just made so much sense for her in the moment after he slaps her to say, you think you're a man, you're not, weakening him. Actually, it's Susan trying to drip feed him in. Susan's his savior. That's why I think her name begins with S all the time. She's trying to get him out of his drug addiction. She's giving him his intervention all the time. So all those little moments. So her breaking into song as Sarah, she has no memories, right? She's arrived in his world. She has no memories. There's no world for her. And he says to her, like any history of arson. So she sings, "Is That All There Is?" I don't know if you've ever heard that song. It's a Peggy Lee song. And all the verses are exactly as she did them. You know, there was a fire in my house. I remember my father, blah, blah, blah. That is the song. She sings the song all the way through, but the spoken word parts are spoken in the Peggy Lee version. So she just does like an exact, like if you would stand up and do karaoke, it would sound just like how she did it. And that's because she has no point of reference. She can't pull on a memory. So she sings something that she's heard, and it's all an excuse to leave the baby monitor there, because they have to not go in guns blazing. So she left the baby monitor there knowing that the cryptic 999 would happen to him there. David Denman is obviously a 9 as well. He sets up the comms to do the 999 repeating there. So they're just trying to tell him, like, remember who you are, you know. But we can't, you know, you couldn't, if someone's a drug addict, you have to intervene very, very carefully, or you could lose them. And that's what their message is. That's why they're doing it.
So, okay. So Ryan Reynolds is a step below God.
Yeah, God is not existent in this world. It's like the number infinity. It doesn't fully exist because you can never get there. Okay. So God is a 10, but he's an idea. They're 9s and actual celestial beings.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. See, okay, so you interpret Melissa McCarthy's character as like this child, and then is it Susan?
Yeah, not a child. But like,
Sarah is, you said, a savior?
Sarah, Sierra, Susan, Savior. Yeah. Melissa McCarthy's names are Margaret, Melissa, Mary, as in Mother Mary. Okay. The religious subtext, and then at the end she becomes Mother, and then Noelle, their daughter, is another name for Christmas.
Okay, because like for me, how I interpreted it, because I was like, I'm sure there's probably a few different ways you can, sure. But like for me, like I interpret it more as just like they're a part of his subconscious, like they're a part of him, like they don't exist without him. Like I think everyone's just a part of him.
No. He really created these worlds. This that I wear, I mean, I wear this because of the 9s. When you see him plaiting that at the start, braiding it up, he's creating a universe, and then snapping it is breaking the universe. So,
Okay, because I was like, I'm not an expert, but I'm just like, is that like a string theory kind of like wink type of
oh
thing?
right, yeah, I
or...
hadn't even considered. I always
Okay.
I always considered it a really cute visual concept of something we couldn't visualize.
Okay, I was just like, is this like a string theory thing?
Because they also use the line that she chalks, 100 feet. They also use that
Okay,
as a
yeah.
way of him breaking the universe. So he gets so upset he
Sure.
breaches that line. But of course, him going to there doesn't destroy the universe because he went out earlier. It's metaphorical. Like it's him saying, I don't want to be
Sure.
a part of this anymore. I'm pressing the reset button. So him stepping over the 100 feet line is metaphorical. And he does destroy the universe. Like he does create an apocalypse. It goes all white and he kills everyone. And he admits at the end, I'm responsible for billions and billions of deaths. And she stops him, says, you don't need to justify yourself. Everything that is because of you. And it's the same conversation that you would have with God, the omnipotent God. If he felt bad about all the killing, he might feel bad. And you might say, but there would be no life without you either. And that's what she's saying to him. No, in the film, he is a God. His name is Gary, Gavin, and Gabriel.
Sure.
Angel Gabriel,
Okay.
who gave Mary a child. I mean, that's what happens, right? He leaves her with Noel. That's the best of all possible worlds. So she becomes Melissa with Noel, with Margaret's job, I think, married to Ben Falcone. So he puts those last three universes together and maybe sprinkles of other ones that we didn't get to see. But yeah, it's not a subconscious thing. Like he is a god. I mean, they do that whole like they turn into like diamond forms. They do that kind of 2001.
Okay. Did you ever play the games The Sims?
Yeah, it was this. It obviously is based on The Sims, right? And they've got like
yeah, which made
the
me
numbers
laugh.
above their heads, yeah, and that's just his worlds, but merging together. But the whole time you're thinking, with Gary, you're thinking like, oh, he's been on crack cocaine. He's clearly like something's up with him. With Gavin, he's so under stress, and he plays video games late into the night at those like gaming cafes. So he's like just a little fucked up, and he thinks a reality show are following him or whatever. But obviously, no. This is his worlds are colliding, and every hint that Susan or Octavia Spencer or David Denman give him, all those little things, they start to destroy the world. They start to pick away at it because he starts to remember it. And in the end, he's actually like tattooed with the 9. His body has created a reminder for him. And then that's the point where she gives him the GHB, a drug that you give to someone recovering from heroin, which is obviously like a real world version of he's a drug addict, high on human.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I just struggled with the movie because I'm just like, why should I care about this guy who's a god? Like if he can create and destroy everything, like what's the problem? Like what, or like what, like why should I care about his character arc? Which to me, there's really not much of a character arc. It's like he exists and he realizes he exists, and then he's like, I'm done. Let's start over. It's just like I struggle with that, I guess, a little bit, because I do like questioning reality style films. And maybe it's just I've seen a lot at this point. I'm just like, I feel like this one did that better. This one did that better. And like you said, like this one came to you at a very like particular time in your life. And I totally get that because I have those movies too. I don't know if it's just the timing of it all, because I will say this movie also like is very 2000s.
Yeah.
Like in the way it's like filmed.
Yeah. Well, that's another interesting thing is that it's filmed in 3 completely different ways. So,
I was gonna say, it's like in 3 different chapters.
Yeah,
almost.
but like so the first movie is done in a Super 16mm actual film. So that one is done how John August, the director, would have preferred to make a film is on film. So he made that made that with Super 16. The second one is they literally used the cameras that they use on Project Greenlight, the Matt and Ben like show where they follow a showrunner. There's literally those like handheld rigs. It's in standard definition on purpose. So the movie goes from HD to standard def because that's how you'd see it like on MTV.
Sure.
And then the final one is done with 35mm, like typical sort of TV pilot. And it's a lot bluer and darker and colder, almost like a Scandinavian looking like Netflix drama kind of thing. So yeah, the film looks very different. The color palettes are completely different. Yeah, I think like if you're going to make a movie one time, like John August did, I mean, he covered, I think, like you can say, I get what you're saying about it not knowing the tone it wants to be. For me, it's like it covers every single genre And I love that about it. Like when you're watching it without knowing anything about it, it almost turns into a haunted house like horror movie. It clearly has elements of comedy. It's absurdist. It's a musical. Yeah, it's existential, esoteric, metaphysical, and also romantic and charming and sweet. I absolutely love it. Yeah, and also I think Ryan Reynolds is hard to swallow as Gary because he's so dumb. And I think that's obviously on purpose. He plays a dumb actor. Like everything about it, even the way the golf ball hits his face, he's kind of like this, and like Ryan Reynolds plays it so dumb, and obviously gets words wrong probabilistically. There was another one he says, I can't remember now, but he says words wrong all the time, and like he's dumb, clearly dumb. And it's funny, we were just talking about Poor Things and how Emma Stone looks different as Victoria to Bella. Ryan Reynolds looks completely different. His face shape changes. Like he looks so slim and tall as Gavin, the showrunner. As Gary, he looks like a buff. Like do you know what? As Gary, I wouldn't have known this the first time I watched it, but he looks like the guy from This Is Us. That's exactly the type of. He's like a TV actor. He looks just like him in that. And then as Gabriel, that looks like Ryan Reynolds to me. Like he looks deeper in the eyes and like. He looks like a solid, like who you'd cast in a really nice pilot of a show, like in Lost or something, you know. So yeah, it's wild to me that Ryan Reynolds has so much dynamic in his range as an actor. I think personally, I don't think Melissa McCarthy does, and I don't think Hope Davis does. But obviously, Hope Davis isn't playing a different person. She's just pretending to. She's always playing S, I guess.
Yeah, for me, maybe that was another thing. The performances didn't really grab me. I thought everyone was just fine.
Yeah.
Again, I think for me, this movie is a really cool concept and it has a lot of cool ideas. I think the execution for me personally, it didn't really work.
Yeah, sure. But I think what I would say, like breaking it down to its bare bones and saying, I don't think that's necessarily fair, because I think you could. It's like when people argue with me about football. Not that they do, but like the typical thing would be if someone's not into football, they go, "What you get excited over like a bunch of men kicking a ball around?" And I was like, "Well, you can do that with literally anything. You could say that version of anything. I guess not to like whatever, like to get into a heated debate or anything, but to say that it's just about this God. Why would I care about him? I think you could probably do that with any film. To be honest, if you didn't like it, I do forgive it its flaws, is because I think it's worthy of like, it's like for people to get together for this like passion project, 20 days. It was in John August's house, by the way. That's why it's like,
oh wow,
yeah, it's like no budget at all for anything.
Yeah,
and like I just think that's the type of movie I can get behind. Like people love Clerks, right? Clerks is like the biggest version of this. People love Clerks. Clerks is shit acted. It's shit acted and it looks shit. And you can, a bunch of guys in the convenience store. But of course, people love it because there's a charm to having something made so raw and so. And I don't think this movie should be held up against other stuff that does as existentialism. To get those days out of those actors. Yeah, I just think And it was before a couple of people blew up. Like, I'm not a massive fan of Melissa McCarthy. I'd say this is my favorite film of hers. And I also don't necessarily love her in The Nines. There's a couple of moments she has where I'm like, I don't buy her at all. But then because I love the movie, I go, but she is acting in the movie. She's playing. So everything, like I can forgive it because I do that. Like, how I did the one with Willem Dafoe, and I said his accent's like changing, but maybe he's like done that on purpose, like he's Frankenstein in his accent. Melissa McCarthy is playing. She's M. I think she's probably Margaret, maybe on like the surface, not on the surface, but like on the baseline or whatever. And every version that G creates for her, for M, she has to play that role. She's almost like an entourage for him. So she's like a yes person or whatever she has to be to get into his life. And he creates things to get her in and stuff. So he had a complete meltdown subconsciously because she plays a handler. So she would be joining his life. They have to come together. And then it's up to Susan to move in next door, or Sarah to move in next door, and like drive a wedge between them. And there's a moment where Sarah's not anti-M, right? Because there's a moment where Gary and Sarah are talking and he reveals that he spotted the Nines. And at that point, she has a way in. Here's my intervention. She goes for it. And she said, I can get you out. You just need to trust me. And suddenly Margaret shows up.
Yeah.
Hey, what you doing? He's like, oh, nothing, whatever. And she goes, how you feeling? And he says, peachy. And she goes, oh, peachy's good. I like peaches. And it's very sweet. And Sarah leans back against the wall, listening to their conversation and smiles to herself. And that is a huge moment because she's not evil. She's so charmed by it. And at the end with Gabriel, she says, like, this is nice. I like this. It's just not real. You know, it's not where you are. And I like that Sarah has the empathy. She can see his appeal, the appeal to him. She can see it. And that moment where she leans against the wall and smiles at how sweet Melissa McCarthy is gets me every time. I'm like, what a sweet thing. Like, she desperately is trying to save what would be her celestial husband. He's here. He's drug addicted. He's like with this woman and she needs him to come back. But like, oh, they are sweet together. Like, it's charming, you know? So she has that moment. And later on, she admits to him that she likes it. She likes Earth. It's cool to her, but it's not where you belong, you know, which I like. I like those touches.
Yeah. I wish they hit for me, but it just didn't. And again, I want to give it another try at some point. I'm just not soon, but at some point.
Yeah.
I will say, so like, I preferred the first and the third chapter probably the most. Right. Like the middle section, it was hard for my attention span a little bit. I was having a hard time it felt a little long and like meandering in the middle. But I understand that like everything's important, everything matters.
Yeah. And that was John August's like autobiographical part, right? So that's literally everything that happened happened to him. The producer saying to him like, so DC was made, the pilot was too clever, so they added dubbing lines to make it dumber for the audience. And he's like, really? Like, that's not the audience we're going for, though. And that's what the higher-ups want that stuff. They ruined his pilot. The show gets cancelled. So all of that stuff's in. And I heard an interview with Ryan Reynolds like years ago where he said, even reading that script in the second part, like the outline, he said was horrible because it's so true. It's so real to what happens. It's almost disgusting how accurate that was. And it's because August is like exercising some demons there. Like he's writing. I from what I understand, he outlined that chapter as a film itself, based as it was happening to him.
In the first chapter, you know, I'm just kind of watching along, and I will say when we meet the little girl, I don't remember her name. It's Elle Fanning. Yeah. Noelle, thank you. When we first meet her at the bus stop, I thought for sure this movie definitely like was way different than I thought it was going to be, because like, so when that encounter happened, I don't know, I interpreted it as like, oh gosh, did he kill a little girl in like the driving accident? And is he in hell? Because I know he even says that at one point, and I thought like, oh, is this like
the other word he got wrong? He says purgatorium.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought for sure that it was going to be like father and daughter, because like she points at him, and I was like, okay, like that for sure is going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I thought with that scene, it seemed like, oh, we're going to go this direction with like, he's dead. And like, this is some kind of, purgatory. But no, it doesn't go that direction, which is totally fine.
Yeah, because that's the direction that he brings up, because John August knows that's the direction that most people would write. So so Noelle's at the bus stop. She's bled over from one of the other worlds, which happens in the car. He sees Gavin and Gabriel in the car as well. He sees Noelle. Then he turns back to her after the police arrive, and she's gone. But there's a poster showing Noelle with the word "knowing" written across it, which is what Gavin wrote, and is off shooting when Gary's living in his house. So there's the other thing is all these universes are happening at once. We see them in a linear sequence, but they are all happening at the same time as well. Because time, Sierra explains to him that time doesn't mean the same thing. You've been gone 4,000 years, not that time means the same thing for us. So they're all happening at once, which is why the pilot that they're filming is Gabriel's story. You know, there's a really lovely, funny touch. It makes me laugh anyway. That they're doing the test screening for people, and they're getting like who liked, and they say Gabriel, which is a hint to the next character that Ryan's playing. So who likes Gabriel? And there's a show of hands, I think everyone. And then, like 8 people, Noelle, and it's everyone. And then Mary, and it's like 6 people, and then they say Sierra, and it's 4 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, like that, and it comes back to like where Susan and Gavin are watching. Obviously, Susan plays Sierra. Susan S knows Sierra S is her. She's doing it all at the same time, and she gets offended that only 4 people liked her, which I love. I love that detail. So she goes, "Really? That only that?" Like she gets offended by it. And you're thinking, as a producer, she's thinking, "Oh, only that many people like the movie, like her character, that character, whoever Sierra is at that point." But when you know who it is, it's funny that it's her that she gets offended by, which is a nice detail. I wrote a list of like lines.
Okay.
Yeah. So
No, you're good. I'm sorry.
no, all good. Yeah, can I live without a belly button? Maybe I'm a god. Any theories? Never let the audience be confused is a line, all written for us. I have all these characters inside my head. They want to live. Do you feel like a man you're not? I'm your number 1 fan. Look for the 9s. So you play a lot of characters all at once. You created the world. You have all the secret codes. They call it God mode. Yes, that's obviously there. When Gavin's playing video games, he says you kind of lose yourself in video games. And that's again true. John August was playing World of Warcraft and getting deep into it. He was playing so late into the night to de-stress because he was writing the show as they were filming it. The show DC, which you can go look up. John August wrote it, and it got cancelled quick. But he was writing the show as he was making it, and he was just doing all-nighters and then playing World of Warcraft because he couldn't sleep. And then he started writing the show. He started living in the show in his head. He had basically a psychotic meltdown, which is exactly where Gavin is. Gavin's gaming starts to bleed into his real life. So yeah, Gavin says when he sat down in the gaming cafe and he's talking to camera, he says, you lose yourself in a bit in the games. It's another life existing at the same time, which is what's happening. If you get stuck, you can hit the reset button. Yeah, so Gary lives in Gavin's house. Gavin is playing Gabriel's video game. Gavin is writing Gabriel's life, knowing. Yeah, so it's all happening at once. But yeah, and I love it. I remember the first few times I watched it, there was not a single time I didn't gain another thing from it, which is a really cool thing for a movie to do. Give you more the more you watch it, because and it's not in the same way that every time you watch it you're in a different place in your life, which some movies can do for you. You know, I've seen City Slickers 20 times, but I watched it recently, like in the last few years, and that was a completely different movie to me, having gone to nearer their age. Like I think he's having a midlife crisis and he's like 30. I think
I never seen it.
It's so good. I found it so much deeper than when I was a kid, and I used to enjoy the jokes. But the 9s isn't like that for me. It's always been the same movie. It's just so layered for me. I get something from it every single time. just little lines, little moments. I must have spotted it before, but even like the artwork in John August's house, where Gary's staying, Gavin's house where Gary's staying, really John August's house, and the artwork is 7-2, the 9 and stuff like that, which I must have noticed before, but this time I was like, oh yeah, maybe I hadn't seen that. And there are obviously, there are 9s everywhere.
Everywhere.
Haunting him. We can do the score. Alex Werman, who I've reached out to once upon a time.
Okay.
Because it's my favorite movie, so I was gonna tell him. I think I reached out to him because when they turn into celestial beings at the end, the diamonds, when G travels home, he the score changes from the main knowing hook, which is it's almost like a piece of music that's pulling him back into the world all the time. Like it grounds him, and then it changes to he frees himself of that, and the score changes completely. Even changes key. It kind of it shifts very dramatically, almost like someone that didn't love the movie would say, "What horrible composing to move the key like that." Whereas I see it as like a breakaway from knowing as he floats up, and I'll play that little bit, and then. But what's good about it is that it resolutes back on the knowing theme and plays over Margaret or Melissa coming to, waking up in the world that he's left her. And yeah, I like the fact that he didn't know that he was going to leave her the world. He wasn't sure if it would be the end of everything. He says probably not. And then he's more worried about how we kill each other than what he does. So yeah, I'll play the score. So yes, it's this really interesting. It's nothing I ever could have written. It's very, interesting. Oops. It's just very weird. Like you're not musical, right? But nothing really would go together there. But it sounds like it does. It's very pretty.
Okay.
Yeah, and it actually has this kind of John Barry, James Bond like bass that plays through it. Imagine this is like a Bond theme here.
Yeah, no, I can see that or hear that.
It's almost like dun, 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 like that. Yeah.
So you're saying it's not typical notes that would go together? Is that what you're saying?
Like
Okay.
Most people that are like kind of structured within how music is written or put together, different chords that go together, probably wouldn't be putting this together.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then these. So this is like it's doing this B flat bass here, and then it's like an F minor 7 up here. Yeah, so it's nothing that I would have ever put together. And then what's interesting is that's the opening titles, that's the creating of the world, but the knowing theme is ever so slightly different, and again, so weird. So the knowing theme is the one that he's playing, Yamaha Disclavia playing it by itself when Gary puts the disc in, and then you see Gavin actually writing it and recording it on the disc. I appreciate they didn't sub in anyone else for Ryan Reynolds' hands, but he's got particular fingers I don't think you can sub in. So it's really him playing it.
Okay.
So the knowing theme, which is based on that opening title's hook, is this. Like that. It's very pretty.
So in regards to like movie scores, is this one of your favorites as well, or not necessarily? I'm just kind of curious.
No, I pivot it too much to the movie. I wouldn't listen to it. I only ever listen to it with the movie, and I never play it. Literally, like maybe apart from making sure I knew it, I never play it. It's tied to the movie so much. It feels like it's Gavin who wrote it for me. It feels, Alex Werman obviously did, but yeah, it just feels like that. And then just to talk on what I was saying, so it's doing this kind of, this is how he transitions from Gabriel to G. So it's doing like the knowing bass. And then it goes into this. What's it do? F minor. What's it move to from there? I must know this. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, so it's doing that, which you can hear how harsh that change is. It doesn't sound like you'd do it. And then it transitions right back, and that's when the camera's coming back into the kitchen, and Melissa opens her eyes and kind of realizes. And you can see that she's been left with the memories, right? Because she knows everything. She remembers the phone calls with him.
Yeah.
Because she notices Noelle's there. It's like she's surprised by it in a way. It's very interesting to leave her. She's the only one that he left with the knowledge of what's happened, which is an interesting choice. Not even by John August, I mean by G himself. Yeah, so that's the score. It's a beautiful score. I don't even know if you can find it anywhere, to be honest. But maybe like YouTube and stuff. But I don't think
No, on Spotify.
it's not. I don't know, maybe, but I don't think so. It's just not a big movie at all. It's just like
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I had never heard of the movie until you talked about it, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely intrigued.
So this is an interesting one where, like, intellectually, I know this isn't the best movie in the world. There's a line where you can tell they're improvising because Susan and Gavin are fighting in the editing bay, and he says it's when she wants to get Dahlia Salem to play Melissa's role, and he says, "You guys came to me with Dahlia," and I said all I was saying was Melissa, 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 and at the same time, speaking over him, Susan says, "No, you were the one that kept pushing Melissa. You pushed Melissa." And it's like no writer would ever write it like that because he is saying that that he pushed Melissa. So that it was clearly improvised. They're not quite listening to each other. And then the fight in the bar, Melissa does flub a line. She's like something about like, you wanted reality. Well, this is reality. And she says it and actually makes a mistake and stumbles over her line. But they just kept obviously pushed through, which because it was reality. That's exactly how someone would sound in a thing like that. You wouldn't say cut, do it again. Anyway, so intellectually, I know though that this isn't the greatest movie. I like it, but in the context of like because it was such a low budget and shot in 20 days in John August's house and stuff like that, nothing to really go from. I think Ryan Reynolds had in between, they were shooting through the night, so to sleep he was actually in John August's bed, like instead of a trailer and stuff like that, like really funny, like really low budget stuff. So with that in mind, I sort of treat it as the same way I do if we see, you and I will watch a movie from the late 1800s that's like 2 minutes long, whatever. Well, that's a great feat for what the context of around it is good enough, But in that respect, I think I understand that it's not the best movie ever. So I think my brain goes like 4.5. But my heart is a 5, maybe 6, 7. But like, the movie just has me like completely every time. And considering how atheist I am, how non-spiritual I am, it's wild to me that I'm kind of so fascinated with movies that do this stuff, that play with the idea of a God among us and stuff like that. But yeah, so I think like a 4.5 because I'm not an idiot. I am aware that it's not the best movie ever, but still I forgive it its flaws. And then 5 for the heart for me. Okay. I'm just going to take my headphones off while you do yours.
No, I think this movie, like you've been speaking about this whole time, is like, I think it's really ambitious and I do like the concept of it a lot. And I really think it had a strong opening. Like I really liked the opening credits with the string and like very minimalistic kind of opening, and I really liked the first chapter a lot, and I liked the third chapter. I was a little lost in the second. I do think it warrants a second watch, so I would be really curious to see how I feel about it on a second viewing. I think in regards to the technical aspects of the movie, so like our brain rating, I'd probably give it a 3. I think it's ambitious, and I think it has a lot of good ideas. It feels similar to maybe like what a Black Mirror episode would be, but to me it's just like a little lesser in my opinion. So I would give it a 3 for that. And then in regards to like my emotion, I didn't really have a great time watching it. I like appreciate the movie more than like actually enjoy it. And there's a lot of those kind of movies that I've had that experience. So I give it a 3 as well. So a total of 6 for my Franken rating.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And also, and I loved our discussion today, which I was like, okay, I know that this is Andy's like favorite movie, and I didn't really care for it too much, but I was really curious to see like why you love it so much, and I love hearing your passion behind it, and like I really loved our conversation today, and it makes me appreciate the movie even more too. And again, I appreciate it, but I just didn't.
And I think that kind of speaks volumes to you, that you weren't like coming at this like, tell me why you like this because you're wrong or anything like that. You were intrigued, and presumably like anybody would prefer to love a movie than not.
Sure.
So if there was a way, because Anna was convinced that by the end of our conversation that I would have convinced you that you like it, but I didn't really have those, because I didn't have those, because I know you a little better than that. I think you wouldn't have. I don't think you are flimsy with your opinion on a movie at all. So I knew that your opinion would have been like, digested, thought, registered, all that kind of stuff. And I knew that it wouldn't just take a conversation to win you over, because that's not how you work as a movie critic. So I didn't expect to, I didn't expect to win you over in that regard. But I knew you'd be open to like, especially because I'm such a movie guy, people are fascinated as to why this is my favorite. And Sometimes I do have those conversations with Anna where she's like, but really Jaws, you know, you wear the green bracelet, but really it's Jaws everywhere. You know, you're so in love with Jaws.
Sure.
And there's an element of it like that. And that Jaws is like an easy movie to say it's your favorite or whatever. So the exclusivity part is there. I know that. But it's still, even with the exclusivity, I still have to go.
Yeah, own it. Own it. It's your favorite.
Even if it's my favorite, like a little bit because no one's heard of it.
Sure.
I still, that doesn't account for the amount of times I've sat and loved it, and I can, you know, I quote it and stuff like that. And I do have a genuine love for it, aside from the fact that it's the only, you know, I'm the only person who knows it. I was actually being interviewed by Rachel Silvestrini, and she brought up like favorite movies, favorite bands, and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And I said, oh, like my favorite movie, like no one's really heard of, is this film called The Nines, like Ryan Reynolds. And she literally went like this and held the DVD up.
Oh, wow.
Like one of my favorite movies. Like, oh, that's crazy. That's like the first time that has ever happened. So most people have not heard of it, and then because I'm such a movie guy, they're like so intrigued to watch it, and then they watch it and they're like, it was good. I don't get why. And I'm like, you got to watch it again. They're like, I don't think I will. That's like tends to be the conversation. But the difference with me is I can't know what it's like to watch it and not fully enjoy it and then give it another go. I loved it. What I will say, I've never really admitted this. The conversation they have on the sofa, you're a 9. God is the ultimate. You're a 9. I started the movie again. So my first time watching it, I didn't finish the movie. I went back and watched it.
Oh,
I watched it again because I was like, I must have missed something. And I was so intrigued to find out, like, well, because it picks up with Gary's storyline, I wanted to watch Gary's again. So I think I watched Gary's again, then skipped Gavin, then got to that reveal.
Okay, interesting.
And carried on watching it. And then I watched it through to the end with the Gabriel stuff. And I think during the Gabriel one, I noticed the tattoo. I think that was it. And I was like, oh, there have been 9s everywhere? Like, such a number guy. So, okay, you know, and obviously you notice the rolling of the dice and stuff. You notice the stuff that he notices.
Yeah.
But I was like, are there hidden 9s everywhere? So then I watched it again out of that. And then it was just that, like, oh, if this movie's been giving me Easter eggs the whole time, I got to go and watch it again. So I watched it again like that. I loved it. And then halfway through that second time, which was almost like a second and a half time, I was like, favorite movie ever. Fucking hell. I was like a kid.
Yeah.
And then that happens.
I totally get it.
That happens when you're, you know, like just turned 21 or whatever. That happens to you where a movie really hits and you're like, this is the perfect movie for me right now. And obviously I saw it the year it came out, so it felt in its time. Yeah. Anna said it's of its time. And I was like, it's timeless. She's like, no, it's of its time. Okay.
And that's how I feel about it as well. It's very 2000s for me.
Which I can't see. I can't, you know, we would need to literally take you back and you watch it then, because I can't see it like that intellectually. I saw it so many times that I don't even notice that stuff, you know. Anna's like, oh no, like even the clothing, the music. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right, but I just don't see it that way. I've just seen it so many times. It just doesn't feel like it's of anything. I think he's got a flip phone. Like I only noticed that this time, that it's like not just a mobile phone. It's obviously because he's Gabriel's holding this thing to get service and stuff. Yeah. Oh, let's be honest. I think you're being very nice. I think intellectually, I think the 3 stars is accurate, but I think you're being very nice with 3 stars emotionally. I think you're probably like
more of a maybe of a 2.5. 2.5.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm
revising.
I'm revising my heart rating.
I was ready for you to say 2.5. Then you said a 3, and I was like, "Oh, you're looking after me. Like, don't need to."
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, I feel so bad right now.
you might end up being a 3 with it, but you couldn't get that from a conversation. You can't get the heart part from a conversation. That you might have gone from might have gone from a 2.5 to a 3. Yes, intellectually, right? During this conversation.
Agreed.
Because the context of it being low budget and then all the autobiographical stuff, and Yeah, you
Yeah.
probably went from like a 2 or 2.5 to a 3 intellectually, but you can't emotionally. You have to go and see the movie differently. I would say I would be.
No, thanks for calling me out because I agree.
And I would be very interested. I know, like, you're not fully enthusiastic to go and see it again, although you'd consider it a second watcher.
Yeah.
But I would be super interested in your opinion, because everything I've just spewed to you is not. I mean, you've got to think this movie is so unknown. There aren't, like, you know, the movie brain guys doing analysis on it. All this is coming from me, having spent years with it.
Sure.
Apart from the stuff that I factually know from interviews and things like that, the theories and the what's happening and why she breaks into song, I've always said it's because she has no memories. She's singing a Peggy Lee song which has dialogue in the song. If someone has a better idea for why that would have been, you know. So I would be really intrigued for you to go, actually, I saw it this way. You'd need a second watch to have even that debate with me, but like I would be interested in your opinion of it after that, just for that element, not even whether you enjoyed it or not.
Sure.
Because I've never really had someone invest in it like I have. And then the other thing is maybe the next time you watch it, we should do a commentary for the show, because obviously I'd be watching it for like the 50th time. You'd be watching it for the second or third or whatever you get to at that point. But like, I think that would be very interesting for us to sort of talk through each segment, and like, because I trust your opinion so much. And after this conversation, I feel way better about the fact that, you know, I was like upset that not that you didn't like it, but I was upset at the idea that because I trust you so much and I hold your opinion up, your opinion of it would hurt mine. You would be yucking my yum, you know. And I was worried about that because I trust you. And I would have felt the same about Anna. And Anna probably knows that. That's why she slapped a 5-star review on Letterboxd when she couldn't remember anything about it. I'm interested to know what people think, but if you hated it, shut up. No, go watch The Nines. I know this was hugely spoilerific, and maybe you went and watched it before. Yeah, there's a little bit of me that's like, share the love, get The Nines out there, and a little bit of it that's like, no one watch this movie. This is my movie. My movie.
You're so that's so funny. No, I loved our conversation today, and thank you everyone for watching.
Bye.
Our next episode will be our next episode will be on The Truman Show, my pick. Continue on with our theme of playing as God, which I'm super excited about.
Truman Show, honestly. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. We'll see what happens.
I do love it. From memory, I love it. It'll be really interesting to see Jim Carrey, right? Because it's been so long since we've really seen him. I haven't seen one of his movies in a long time. And comedies, out-and-out comedies, age quicker than any other genre, I think. Truman Show, I think, is deeper enough and solid enough for it not to have. But yeah, it'd be really, really interesting. And obviously, probably for me, like a Laura Linney that I didn't know how amazing she would be or how good she was back when I saw Truman Show, probably. I wouldn't have even known who she was. Really.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to rewatch that. Too, So, but until next time, thank you again for watching, and happy movie watching.